mitzvahs of Purim in a general overview. And let's begin with the first mitzvah, which of course is the mitzvah of reading the Megillah. And you have to know that Megillah Esther is an amazing, amazing sefer. The Gemara says it was written B'ruach HaKodesh. It was written with divine inspiration. At first glance, it seems to be a very straightforward story of historic events. It shouldn't have required divine inspiration. But the truth is, over the centuries, the Mefarshim, the commentators, reveal that there are many, many hints in the spelling of words, in the numerical value of words, in the choice of words, that allude to some very, very profound things, to the extent that it dawns on you after a while that a sefer such as this could only have been written with Ruach HaKodesh. I'm going to share with you one amazing idea, and this is written by the Maram Shif, who was a Talmudic commentator, but he wrote a few little thoughts on the Megillah, and he makes the following point. There are places in the Megillah where there are hints to divine names of Hashem. And I'm going to talk about three of them. When Esther invites Hoffman to the party, or rather I should say, when Esther tells Achashverosh that Achashverosh should come with Hoffman, so Esther says, Yavo Hamelech v'Haman Hayom Ela Meshteh Asher Asisi Lo, that the king and Haman should come today to the party that I've prepared. So those words, Yavo Hamelech v'Haman Hayom, if you take the first letters, Yavo is Yud, Hamelech is Hey, v'Haman Vav, Hayom, Hey, that's a hint to the shame of Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Wow. So in Esther's words, there's a hint to the name Yud Kei Vav Kei in the initial letters, in the first letters of the four words. Anyway, Hoffman comes to the party, and he's really thrilled, and it's really a great honor. And when the party's over, he is just on cloud nine. And what happens? He encounters Mordechai. And not only does Mordechai not bow to him, Mordechai doesn't even move, doesn't even stand up, just remains sitting. And Hoffman is just so upset. He comes home, he gathers his friends, and his wife is there, and he starts telling them about how rich he is and how powerful he is. And he says, V'chol zeh einenu shovet li, and all this is worth nothing to me. When I see that Mordechai sitting in the gate of the king, doesn't bow down to me, it's worth nothing. All my wealth, all my power, my wonderful family, all my children, it's worth nothing. Now those words, Zeh einenu shovet li, if you take the last letters, you have the name of Hashem backwards. Zeh, the last letter is a Hey. Einenu, last letter is a Vav. Shovet, last letter is a Hey. Li, last letter is a Yud. So here you have the name of Hashem in reverse in the final letters. So again, Esther said Yavo Hamelech v'Haman Hayom. So you had the name in the correct order in the initial letters. And Hoffman has the name of Hashem in reverse in the final letters. What's the resolution of the story? So later in the Megillah, when the plot is revealed, and the king really is steaming, says that Haman realizes Ki cholsa elov hara, that the evil is decreed upon him. There's no escaping the king's wrath. So the words are Ki cholsa elov hara. Again, you have the name of Hashem hinted in the last letters, but this time in order, consecutive order. Ki cholsa elav hara'ah. The last letter of ki is Yud. Cholsa, last letter is Hey. Elav, last letter is Vav. Hara'ah, last letter is Hey. So we have 3 times where Hashem's name is hinted in the Megillah. The first time it's in the correct order in the initial letters. The second time it's in reverse order in the final letters. And the third time, at the conclusion of the story, so to speak, it is in the correct order, but again in final letters. So how do you account for those differences? You have to understand a very amazing thing. We know that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, this is the name that implies God's mercy. Midas HaRachamim. That we all know from Rashi and Chumash. Rashi and Chumash says that the name Elokim implies the Midas Hadin, the attribute of divine judgment, and the name Yud Kei Vav Kei implies Midas HaRachamim, the attribute of divine mercy. But it wouldn't be far off to suggest that that's when you spell the name forward. But if the name is backward, then it would be the exact opposite. Anything backward is the exact opposite of what it is forward. So if the name Yud Kei Vav Kei going forward implies Midas HaRachamim, we should assume that the name going backward implies Midas HaDin. So let's think what's going on over here. Esther understands that she's embarking on a mission which is fraught with danger. And we know from the Megillah that she understands that she's going at risk of her own life, because anybody who comes to the king uninvited, unless the king extends the golden scepter, that's it. Achasta Solamis, that's a capital offense. So Esther understands that she's in really laying her life on the line. So when you're about to do something like that, okay, for the salvation of the Jewish people, but you're putting your life at risk, so what do you need? You need divine mercy. You need Midas HaRachamim. You need that Vamonos should have pity on you. So obviously, Esther is trying to invoke the Midas HaRachamim, the attribute of divine mercy. And therefore, in her words, the authors of the Megillah hinted to Midas HaRachamim, because that's obviously what Esther needs and what she would like to access at this very, very critical time. Now, Hoffman, on the other hand, let's put ourselves in Hoffman's shoes. What's Hoffman trying to do? The Gemara says that there was no person who knew how to slander as Hoffman did. Now this is understood on 2 levels. First, when he went to Achashverosh and he made the case for the annihilation of the Jewish people, he obviously made a convincing case. Achashverosh acquiesced. So the Chazal tell us he had all sorts of accusations about the Jewish people. The Gemara only refers to them in a short, but if you look in the Targum Sheni, there are 2 Aramaic translations to Megillah Esther, but the second is Targum Sheni. There is a long litany of accusations against the Jews. They're lazy, and they're always celebrating Shabbos and holidays, and they do this outlandish thing and this outlandish thing, and if they had the opportunity, they would humiliate the king. Every accusation under the sun. That's on one level. But he's slandering the Jews to Achashverosh. But Chazal tell us that he also was a mekatrek. He also was trying to attack the Jewish people vis-a-vis God. But he was making accusations against the Jewish people not only to arouse the interest of Achashverosh in bringing about their annihilation, he was raising a critique of the Jewish people in order to arouse God's anger against the Jewish people. This is the idea of a kichwa. So he's trying to arouse the Midas Hadin, the attribute of divine justice. So therefore, the name of God, which is alluded to in Haman's speech, Zeh Einenu Shoveli, is of course going to be the name of Hashem in reverse, which implies Midas Hadin. Midas Hadin. Okay. how do we account for the fact that in Esther's words, the shame is alluded to in the initial letters, and in Haman's words, the shame is alluded to in the final letters? So this is a very deep thing. Al-Pi Kabbalah. This is the idea from Jewish mysticism. Initial letters, first letters of words, imply midas harachamim. Final letters of words imply midas adin. You need to explain why, or is it obvious? It's obvious, right? Why that should be? Not obvious. Okay, it's very simple. It's like this. Think about it for a second. The midas hadin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when the HaKadosh Baruch Hu applies strict judgment, that doesn't mean that God throws the book at you. That means God withholds His blessing. He withholds His bounty. He cuts you off, so to speak. Then, if God cuts off His bounty, He cuts off the flow of life and vitality, you're in big trouble. You don't need Him to throw the book at you. All He has to do is withhold His goodness, and that's bad enough. Midas harachamim is God bestowing, God extending, God causing the bounty to flow. That's midas harachamim. Midas adin is holding back. Let's think about it for a second. Initial letters of words lead into the rest of the word. Final letters, this is where the word ends. There's a break. At that point, the speech is cut. There's an interruption, a pause, until you come to the next word. So therefore, initial letters allude to the midas harachamim. In the same way that the first letter flows into the second letter, it alludes to midas harachamim, which is expansive. It is God's bounty flowing. Final letters are judgment, because it stops. The flow is cut. Now, think about this for a second. If I would tell you that there are 5 letters in the Hebrew alphabet that are really the strongest midas hadin, what 5 letters would those be? Those would be the 5 letters that you only find at the ends of words. Right? The final mem, the final nun, the final pei, the final tzadi. Right? These letters, final chaf, these are letters which only can be at the end of words. So therefore, it's really midas hadin. It's not just they happen to be at the end of words. They only can be at the end of words. Now those 5, by the way, in Kabbalah, are called the Chamesh Gevuros. There are 5 of the 10 spheros lean to the side of din, and those are hinted in the 5 final letters. And that's why whenever you talk about midas hadin, it's always the number 5. And that's why, for example, the Kohen Gadol goes to the mikveh 5 times in Yom Kippur, because he's trying to atone and soften the midas hadin. Hoshana Rabbah, you beat the Hoshana 5 times. Again, you're trying to sweeten the midas hadin. So, final letters is midas hadin. So let's think about it again. So Esther, she wants to arouse midas harachamim. She wants to arouse divine mercy. So, in her speech, we have the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in the proper order, hinted in initial letters, which is midas harachamim. Haman, who wants to be makatre, he wants to arouse the midas harachamim, he has the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in reverse, in final letters. Ze einenu shover li. It's hinted in the last letters of words. So what's the resolution of the story? This is an amazing thing. An amazing, amazing thing. The truth is, the resolution of the Purim story is both. And I'll prove it to you. There's an interesting thing that when we finish reading the Megillah, there's a bracha we say. And what is the conclusion of that bracha? Baruch atah Hashem. What is the conclusion of the bracha? So it's a machlokas in the Gemara what the conclusion should be. One opinion says that the conclusion should be Hanifra Yisrael mikol tzareim, that God punishes all the enemies of the Jewish people. That should be the conclusion. Another opinion says that the conclusion should be Hakel HaMoshiach, God who saves the Jewish people. So there are two opinions. The Gemara says Hilkach Naminal L'Tarvayu. Therefore, we say both, and that's our nusach. Hanifra L'Yisrael Mikol Tzareim Hakel HaMoshiach. That God punishes the enemies of the Jewish people. He is the God who saves the Jewish people. So, what is the idea? The idea is exactly this. In other words, when God punishes the enemies of the Jewish people, what midah, what attribute is He displaying? The midah sadin. This is a judgment against the enemies of the Jewish people. But when He saves the Jewish people, even if they're not particularly deserving, that's a demonstration of the midah racham. So the question is that when God brought the Purim story to a successful conclusion, what was He doing? Was that a function of midah sadin or a function of midah racham? And what's the answer? The answer is both. The fact that Hoffman got his just desserts, that's a function of midas adin. The fact that the Jewish people were saved, that's a function of midas harachamim. And therefore, in the conclusion of the story, Kichwa se'elav hara, you have the name Yudke Vavke in the proper order, which hints to midas harachamim, but you have it in final letters, which hints to midas adin, because the resolution of the story is that it's both. That it's both. So Esther tried to arouse midas harachamim, because her interest was primarily to save the Jews. Her interest was not in punishing Haman. She would have been happy just to save the Jews. So she wants to be ma'orer midas harachamim. Haman wants to be ma'orer to arouse midas adin against the Jews, of course, that the Jews should be destroyed. But the resolution is that there's both. There's midas harachamim, which we are the beneficiaries of, and there's midas adin, of course, which Haman was the victim of. This is just one small, tiny example of things that are hinted in the Megillah. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds, of such hints in the Megillah. There's a sefer that was written by one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Eliezer Breitowitz. It's called the author of the Rokeach. And he wrote a sefer, a commentary on Megillah Esther, which is entirely comprised of gematrias and hints and ramazim and amazing, amazing things. Now, I'll give you an example, a small example. It says in the end of the Megillah that when Esther wrote the Megillah, it says Vatichtov. Esther bas Avichail, that Esther, the daughter of Avichail, wrote the Megillah. If you look at the Megillah, the tuf of Vatichtov is a large tuf. It's a large tuf. Why is it a large tuf? So he says a very simple thing. Chazal tell us that Esther was the last of the Kisvei HaKodesh. It was the last of the books that became part of the biblical canon. Now that is a very, very complex subject, by the way. Exactly how a book becomes canonized. How does it become part of the Bible, the Kisvei HaKodesh? It seems from the Gemara Megillah that the test of whether it should be part of the canon or not is whether it's written Ruach HaKodesh. If it's written Ruach HaKodesh, if it's written in the spirit of prophecy, then it becomes part of the canon. If it's not written Ruach HaKodesh, then it could be a book that contains many, many wise things. You keep it on the shelf, you may study it from time to time, but it's not part of the Bible, so to speak. Esther was written Ruach HaKodesh, so it became part of the biblical canon. But it's the last one. There was no subsequent book that was written Ruach HaKodesh. Did Esther know that? Did Esther know this would be the last book? So we would have assumed, how would she know that? Just because this book was written Ruach HaKodesh doesn't preclude the possibility that there'll be later books written Ruach HaKodesh. Correct? It doesn't mean this is the last one necessarily. But it says the Rokeach, Esther knew this was the last one. What? In other words, it's not just that she wrote this Ruach HaKodesh, but with her Ruach HaKodesh, she knew that this is the last book that would ever be written Ruach HaKodesh. And therefore, she hinted to this by writing a big tuf. What does the big tuf symbolize? Well, tuf is the last letter of the aleph base. So if you want to hint to something being the end, you write a tuf, a big tuf. That's the end. Yeah.
So does a person who has Ruach HaKodesh know that they have Ruach? I mean, who determines whether it was written by Ruach HaKodesh?
No. Again, a person who has Ruach HaKodesh knows he has Ruach HaKodesh. That you know. If you have it, you know. Now the question is, how do we know? Now, if I get a letter from someone who's a Baal Ruach HaKodesh, how do I know he has Ruach HaKodesh? Well, if he tells me that tomorrow these stocks are going to go up and these stocks are going to go down, and sure enough it happens, then now I know he has Ruach HaKodesh. But the point is that we have to investigate the Megillah for us to bring evidence to the proposition that Esther had Ruach HaKodesh, but Esther knew. So the Rukach says that Esther, through her Ruach HaKodesh, knew that this would be the last book that would be written, and therefore she hinted that when she wrote the word about Kichwa, that Esther wrote this book with a big Tuf. Tuf is the last letter of the alphabet. This is the last work that will be written in Ruach HaKodesh. And this one sefer of the Rukach has dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of such hits. And I'll tell you an amazing thing that Rav Tzadok HaChayin says. So one would say, well, that means, l'chora, it means that when we read the Megillah, we're only taking out of it like the equivalent of a drop from an ocean. Because we understand it perhaps in the most superficial level, maybe the translation of the words, but we certainly don't appreciate all the hints and all the remuzim, and right? Are we missing something? So listen to what Rav Tzadok HaKayin says. An amazing thing. There's a Mishnah Megillah. The first Mishnah Megillah says that Megillah Nikras, the Megillah is read on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th of Adar. How so? So Purim is the 14th of Adar. Purim in cities with walls like Yerushalayim is on the 15th of Adar. So how do you have a Megillah read on the 11th, 12th, and 13th? The Rabbanim made an ordinance that people who live in small villages where there might not be a minyan, might not be a balkore, a person that can read the Megillah. So since they come into the big city on Monday and Thursday, which is the market day, the judgment day, so the Chacham made a dispensation that they could read the Megillah on the Monday or Thursday before Purim. What? So if Purim falls out on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday or on a Sunday, they can read it the Monday or Thursday before, which will be sometimes the 11th, 12th, or 13th. By the way, today, of course, was the 11th of Adar. So today is also a little Purim day. Should be in the mood already, starting from last night. Now, the wording of the Megillah is Megillah Nikras. The Megillah is read. Passive voice. The Megillah is read. So the Mefarshim ask a question that why doesn't the Mishnah speak in the active voice? We read the Megillah. We read the Megillah. Now I would have said a simple answer to that question. A very, very simple answer. There's no one person who reads the Megillah on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. You can't say we read the Megillah on these 5 days. Because there is no single person who reads the Megillah on those days. If you're living in an open city with no wall, you read it on the 14th. If you're living in a walled city, you read it on the 15th. If you're a villager, perhaps that year it'll be the 11th. But no one is reading the Megillah all 5 days. So therefore, in the passive voice, the Megillah is read, but not read by any one person. Some people will read it now, some people will read it later. So it is read. But the Mefarshim point out a very interesting thing. That even if you look in Megillah Esther, when Megillah Esther talks about the mitzvah of reading the Megillah, where in the Megillah does it tell us there's a mitzvah to read the Megillah? It says, V'hayamim ha'ela nizkarim v'nasim, that these days are commemorated. Also the passive voice. It doesn't say we commemorate these days. The days are commemorated. So it's quite odd. Why don't we speak about the active voice? So Rav Tzadok HaKayin says an amazing thing. He says, because we don't really actively read the Megillah and extract all its messages. Because we don't understand the Megillah. There's so much embedded there. You can't say that we read the Megillah and we absorb its lessons. The Megillah is read. It's read. In the passive voice. Meaning when we read the Megillah, it may be that in an active way we are not taking in all its lessons, but it is read nevertheless. Somehow the Megillah penetrates into our bones, even though we cannot consciously extract the lessons. Somehow the lessons read themselves into our psyche. And that's why the Mishnah and the verse itself in the Megillah speak about the commemoration in a passive voice. The days are remembered. That means when you go to shul and you hear the Megillah, you might not be aware of what you're absorbing. But there are lessons that sink in, that penetrate, even if you're not conscious of it. And by the way, this may be the explanation, perhaps a mystical sense, of a curious anomaly in halacha that pertains to reading the Megillah. The Mishnah says in Maseches Megillah that if you hear the Megillah in Hebrew, you are Yotze, you fulfill the obligation even if you don't understand Hebrew. If I read the Megillah in Hebrew and you hear it, you're Yotze even if you have not a clue what it means. Now there is a machlokas Rishonim, there's a dispute among the Rishonim whether this is generally the rule or is this an exception. Meaning there are some Rishonim that hold that this is equally applicable to any mitzvah. The mitzvah of Kiddush, for example. If you hear Kiddush in Hebrew, you're Yotze even if you don't understand Hebrew. The Rosh, the Maseches Megillah, holds that Megillah is an exception. That means that as a rule, if you want to be Yotze a mitzvah hearing it, you have to understand what the words mean. If you say it in Hebrew, you're Yotze without understanding. But if you want to be Yotze hearing it, you have to understand. And therefore the Rosh says that if a person does not understand Hebrew, they should actually say the Kiddush word for word along with the person making Kiddush. They should not rely on simply hearing it, because the Rosh says that the rule generally is that you can only be Yotze a mitzvah hearing if you understand what you're hearing. If you say it, you don't have to understand. But if you only hear it, you have to understand. If you don't understand, it's not called you heard it. But Megillah is the exception. By Megillah, you are Yotze even if you don't understand. So the question is, if it's a general rule that there's no requirement to understand Hebrew, whether you're reciting or whether you're listening, okay, I understand. There's no requirement. But if, as a rule, you have to understand what you're hearing, why should Megillah be the exception? The answer may be that somehow there is a power in the Megillah that the Megillah gets its lesson across even if you don't understand. And that's why Megillah is an exception. Everything else, if you hear it, you have to understand what you're hearing. Megillah, it penetrates. It sinks in. So this is a very, very powerful mitzvah, the mitzvah of Megillah. Needless to say, if you understand it, it's even better. But even if you don't understand it, don't say, what's the point? What's the point? It's like eating a balanced diet. If you eat a balanced diet, you'll be nourished even if you know nothing about nutrition. It's just a fact. You ate a balanced diet, so your body is nourished. Megillah is one of those things. It nourishes you even if you don't understand what it is. But if you understand, it's even better.
In his book, the Rosh, did he write about the very famous...
No, he doesn't. It's very odd that he had no explanation for that. Okay, I have to say it because probably everyone knows it already. But the most famous remez in the Megillah, which perhaps no one understood for hundreds of years, is in the listing of the 10 sons of Hoffman there are a number of small letters. Small letters. There's a small tuf, there's a small shin, and another name, there's a small zayin, which is very odd. What are those small letters allude to? No one knows. And no one knew for years and years and years and years and years and years. After the Second World War, in the Nuremberg trials, so there was a trial of 11 of the top echelon of the Nazi leadership, and they were convicted, sentenced to death. One committed suicide before he could be hanged. So 10 were hanged in 1947. Actually, it was not 1947, it was really 1946, but it was the Hebrew year Tafshin Zayin. It was after Rosh Hashanah already. And the Nazis were very familiar with Jewish traditions. And one of them said, as he was being taken to be hanged, and he noted the fact that 10 Nazis were being hanged on this day, he said, this is Purim Fest. Just like the 10 sons of Hoffman were hanged. So 10 Nazis were hanged. And of course, the year of that hanging is hinted in the listing of the 10 sons of Hoffman, the small letters Taf Shin Zayin, which allude to the Hebrew year Tafshin Zayin, which was the Hebrew year of the execution. That's probably the most famous rebus. And you know, the amazing thing is that what did people assume until the 20th century? It must have been people were knocking their heads against the wall to figure out, like, what?
Because her request is that they be hung again, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they were already killed, they were hanged, yeah.
Which is curious, right?
Yeah, because very short.
But I'll tell you an interesting thing. I didn't see this myself. I did not see this myself, but a good friend of mine told me that this is the case. You know, that many of the fine painters of the Renaissance used to use biblical subjects. I think I've mentioned in the past my junket to Amsterdam a few summers ago, and in the Rembrandt Museum, in the Rembrandt house, which is not the museum, but the museum in his house, there was a magnificent painting by a disciple of Rembrandt of Achashverosh, Esther, and Mordechai. It was really magnificent. But biblical themes were often used. So a friend told me that there is a painting of Haman on a horse, riding a horse, in full Renaissance regalia. This is one thing that they painted these people very in an anachronistic way. In other words, dressed as Renaissance people would be dressed, even though they had lived hundreds and hundreds of years before. Okay, that's a little bit of artistic license. So this picture of Hoffman, and he's wearing, the Renaissance type big puffy hat and the robe, and he's riding this magnificent horse. And the trim of the coat, the pattern on the trim of the coat is swastikas. Now, the swastika was became associated with the Nazi Party in the 20th century. Yeah. But it was a symbol. It was a symbol. The broken cross. It's a cross essentially, and the arms of the cross are broken. Sometimes turning in a clockwise direction, sometimes counterclockwise direction. But it seems that I never saw this picture. Maybe you can Google it and try to find it.
How did they know somebody's blade? It's titled someone?
Yeah. And which seems to be an amazing foreshadowing of the fact that the swastika would become the symbol of Haman's descendants. Maybe someone should do their homework and find that out, circulate it. But in any case, there's a lot in the Megillah, so obviously everyone should be very, very careful to come to the Megillah. Another mitzvah, or another two mitzvahs we have on Purim, are the mitzvahs of Mishloach Manos and Matanas Levyayin. The Mishloach Manos is the mitzvah to give gifts of food to friends. The minimum requirement is 2 food items to a single individual. I mean, you can go all out too. But the minimum requirement is to send one person 2 gifts of food, 2 different food items. And then Matanos Lav Yonim is to give 2 poor people each 1 gift. It could be a food or, as usually is the case, money. So where does this come from? I mean, there are many, many explanations. The simplest explanation is as follows. One of the tremendous accusations that Haman made against the Jewish people was, Yeshna Am Echad, there is a nation, Mefuzar Umafayra. They are scattered and spread apart. Now the Gemara explains that what Hoffman was trying to do was simply tell Achashverosh that there'll be no harm done if we wipe them out. It's not like they're concentrated in a single place. They're not going to leave a bald spot in your empire if we remove them. They're scattered, they're spread, there's a few here, a few there, so no one will know the difference if we kill them off. But the Mefarshim say that, as we said before, that Haman is also being makatreg, he's also trying to attack the Jews in God's eyes. And this is a very, very serious critique of the Jewish people, that the Jewish people are scattered and spread. There's no unity, there's no achdus, there's no friendship, there's no cooperation. Nothing is new. As the French saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So if this is a problem now, it was a problem then too. So how is this rectified? Obviously it has to be rectified in some way, because otherwise the miracle couldn't have happened. Well, that's what Esther told Mordechai, Lech Knais Eskola Yehudim, go gather all the Jews. And this is something that we all know, this is part of our experience, that when the Jews unite, Jews only unite in crisis. They only unite in crisis. So Haman threatened the Jewish people, that's when Jews come together. That removed the critique, the Kichwa of Haman, and the Jews are spared. So in order to reinforce this newfound unity, the Chazal were masaking mitzvahs that foster unity. You share with other people, you help other people. That creates a spirit of unity, a spirit of achdus. But let's mention an important thing. I grew up in a small town, Hartford, Connecticut. Not a small town, but a small Jewish community. So I remember as a child that when Purim came and people delivered shalach manos, you went in, you visited, and you sat, and there was this show of friendship. And nowadays, it's like you're working for FedEx. You got a lot of deliveries, you got to, you go in there, you think here, go there, got no time to talk to you, here's your I'm off. It seems that, even if we fulfill the letter of the law, we've lost some of the spirit of the law. Because we have time for the delivery, we don't have time for the friendship that it's supposed to create. So I think that maybe we should consider, maybe send a few less, but spend some time and visit and say hello and show that you cherish the friendship with that person, that you bring the shalach manos to. I think it's an important thing. It just shouldn't be that, I remember one time I was driving down a certain street in Toronto, and there was a car in front of me with a very harried person delivering shalach manos, and he got out of the car to bring shalach manos to one of the houses, and he forgot to put the car in park. Ooh. He gets out of the car, and the car, now obviously if you're not pressing down the gas, it can't move so fast, but about a second he realized, hey, his car's moving, he goes back in. It was just
He's in such a run.
It was one of those things. I mean, it could have been tragic, but it happened to be hysterically funny, in retrospect. But in any case, the idea is that these mitzvahs are meant to foster friendship. Now, the Ishbitzer rather says an amazing thing. Shushan, the city of Shushan was located in a province which was called Elam. Elam. Shushan Abir Asher Elam HaMedina, it says in the book of Nehemiah. Elam. And the Gemara tells us in two places a very interesting thing about Elam. It says that Elam was Zachsal L'Lamed, V'lo Zachsal L'Lamed. They had Torah scholars. But these Torah scholars did not teach Torah. They didn't spread Torah. In Bavel, the Torah scholars not only learned for themselves, they also spread Torah. But so in Elam, there was something that was amiss. That people learned, but they didn't share their learning with others. So why is that? So the Ishbitzer says that it's known, I don't know where he knows it from, he says it's a known thing that the characteristic that defined Elam, the nature of that province, was the midah of tsaras ayin, the midah of stinginess. That was characteristic of the people of that province. You know what tsaras ayin is? Tsaras ayin is when you look at another person and you see that person is successful, he's doing well, it bothers you. That's what tsaras ayin is. It's not just stinginess. It pains you to see another person doing better.
Jealousy.
It's worse than jealousy.
You don't forgive him.
That's probably what the closer. In Yiddish, that's a great word. You don't forgive another person. That's tsaras ayin. And this was the midah of Elam. This is the nature of this province. Perhaps a hint to this is that the Gemara says that the animal, which is the symbol of Persia, this is a part of Persia, is a bear. A bear. Babylonia is symbolized by a lion, and Persia is symbolized by a bear. And the nature of the bear is the bear eats, consumes, takes for itself. The bear does not spread the wealth, doesn't share with other people. So maybe that's a hint to it. So says the Ishbitzer that when Jews live in a place, they're also influenced by the culture, the values, the nature of the environment. If this is an environment where tsaras ayin took root, it affected the Jews as well. So they became stingy with their Torah too. No, I have Torah, you don't. Like for myself, I don't have to share it with you. So this is something which has to be rectified, and that's the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos and the mitzvah of Vamonos Levi'ina.
What's the difference between Einara and Swar's side?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing?
The morale relates all the Gemaras of tsaras ayin to ayin hara.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, so this is what we have to do. We have to become a little more generous, a little more willing to witness other people's success. And that's a good first step. Mishloach Manos and Vamonos Levi'ina. I'll share with you an amazing thought I once heard from a Jew in California about Mishloach Manos. Some poskim say that the manos should be sent preferably with a messenger. You don't bring them yourself. You send them with a messenger. Why should that be? Because that's the wording of the verse. Mishloach manos. You send gifts. You don't bring them yourself. You send them with a shliach. What could the idea be? Normally we say mitzvah bo yosem b'shlucha. That even a mitzvah that you do via an agent, it's better if you do it yourself. Right? When it comes to Shabbos preparations, you can have the household help make Shabbos, but it's better if you do something yourself. It's greater honor of Shabbos. How could there be a mitzvah which is specifically meant to be done through an agent and not done yourself? So I heard a very, very beautiful thought from a certain Yid. He said like this. He says, the whole challenge of Purim, the whole thing that we have to learn on Purim is that God is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Now, things happen. But really, who is directing the course of history? The Vamonos. And that's what the Megillah is all about. That's what we're supposed to extract from the Megillah. You have this chain of coincidences, which seems so outlandish. The Vamonos is pulling the strings. That's why things happen as they happen. So that means it's coming to you through intermediaries, but you have to understand that really the Vamonos is behind the whole thing. That's what Shalach Manas is. I come to your door, and I bring you this beautiful package, and you immediately jump to the conclusion that I'm giving it to you. And I say, no, it's not for me. I'm only a shliach, I'm only a messenger. It was really sent by that person over there. So it dawns on you, it's true. There are things I receive from an intermediary, but really they're being sent from someone else. That's the whole idea of Purim. That's the lesson of Purim. So the Chazal ordained that the Mitzvah of Mishloach Manos should be done that way to hint to the idea that the things that we don't get from the person who hands them to us. We get them from the Ribono Shel Olam who's behind the scenes. Now the Rambam writes that if a person has a choice, it is better to be marba, to increase the matanos levyenu, the gifts to the poor, than Mishloach Manos. And I think in our society, it certainly makes perfect sense. You know, it's funny. Maybe this is Purim Torah, but to me it seems that Purim is a refutation to one of Newton's basic laws of physics, of the conservation of matter. Because it seems that before Purim, everyone buys very, very, very fine things delivered Shalach Manos, and it gets redistributed, and then everybody has trash. What happened to all that? It just disappeared off the face of the earth. But after all said and done, all the Shalach Manos you get, so much candy and so much this and so much that, and do we really need it? Most of us don't, and most of us end up fighting with our children over it. We try to limit their consumption of it, and for the week or so after Purim, it's just an orgy of sugar. So there are people who really need our help. So if you can direct it to them, that certainly is a very good thing. It says in the Shulchan Aruch that on Purim, Kol haposhet yado nosmo, whoever puts out his hand, you give. But during the rest of the year, there's more suspicion. You investigate, is the person truly deserving or not? But on Purim, that's a klal, Kol haposhet yado nosmo. Sfarim HaKadoshim tell us an amazing thing. That on Purim, the Ribono Shel Olam is also the same way. Ribono Shel Olam, if we put out our hands to Him, meaning we make requests of Him, Purim is a very, very powerful day for tefillah. There's tefillahs that the rest of the year may not be answered. On Purim could be answered. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu also, whoever puts out his hand to Him, the Vamonos also responds. By the Beit Tzadikim, many of them used to perform miracles in Purim. There was people who come to them in the weeks before Purim for healing and for children and for all sorts of problems. And sometimes the rebus would say, I can't do anything for you now. But if you come on Purim, perhaps in Purim something can be done. And with the Kayach of Tefillah, they'd be Pa'il Yeshuas. They would bring about salvation for these individuals on Purim. So certainly, this is something which is important for us to know. Sometimes on Purim, we're so distracted that our tefillahs are kind of perfunctory at best and garbled at worst. The truth is that we should make a special effort that, starting with the Ma'ariv at the beginning of Purim and Shachris and Mincha, that the tefillahs of Purim should be said properly. It's a very powerful day of tefillah. There are people that had the minhag to get up early in the morning and say Tehillim before davening. I mean, these are very, very, very auspicious times for the power of prayer. Just like we respond to whoever puts out his hand, so the Vamonos does as well. And finally, the mitzvah is the mitzvah of Su'udah. And hours later, I'll just tell you one little interesting thing about the Su'udah. The Shem Shmuel says that it's really a very strange thing. The custom of Sudas Purim is to eat the Sudas Purim at the end of the day. Eat at the end of the day. And that's in contrast to every Yontif. Every Yontif, when do you have the Suda? Well, the Suda of the day. You go to shul, you daven the Shabbos, plus if you come home and you have lunch, early lunch. And that's the Suda. And Purim is at the end of the day. So why should that be? So it's an amazing thing. The idea of a Suda is when a Jew accomplishes something, when a Jew achieves something, so you mark the achievement with a Suda. A person finishes a Masechta, a person learns an entire tractate of the Talmud, a person makes a siyum, there's a Suda. Right? The Suda is to celebrate and to consolidate the achievement. When a person does a mitzvah, whether it's a bris milah or a pidyon haben, or whether he gets married, there's a Suda. It says in the Shem Shmuel that Purim, there are a lot of mitzvahs. There's a lot of things to learn, a lot of things to understand. And therefore we push up the Suda to the end of the day so that the Suda will consolidate all that we achieved over the course of the day. So it's a day we're involved in mitzvahs, we're involved in bringing goodwill and good cheer to people that are in less fortunate straits. And we hear words of Torah, and we think about them, and we've read the Megillah twice, and we've done all sorts of wonderful things. And therefore we pushed off the Suda until the end of the day, so that the Suda will not only consolidate the earlier achievements, but it will consolidate everything that we hopefully achieve throughout the day of Purim, and it will put the finishing touch and the seal on the entire day of activity. Now, the halach is, of course, that the Suda has to be eaten on Purim. So a person shouldn't start the Suda at 7 o'clock at night. But the custom is to stretch the Suda into the evening at the end of Purim. And but the Suda should begin, and the substantial part of it should be eaten during the daylight time. But that's what we do at the end.
Purim as well?
Pardon?
In Jerusalem, is this done Shushan Purim at the same time?
Same thing, normally. Now this year will be a little different because Shushan Purim is Friday. But normally that will be the case. So Be'ezus Hashem, it should be a very, very meaningful Purim for everyone. And it should be a happy Purim. It should be really a day that we really achieve the level of true joy, which hopefully will last us for the entire year. Be'ezus Hashem, next Monday we'll report back.